Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tiny Classroom Training Live. We're thrilled to have you here as we embark on enhancing your professional skills. Today is our second session, honing on what makes training work, focused on needs, support, and practice. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat, as Don and Artie will be answering some as we move along. Let me pass the microphone to our esteemed coaches who will guide us through today's session. Artie and Don, the floor is yours.
Here we are again, Artie.
Hi, Don. How are you?
I'm just fine.
Well,
just fine.
I guess we're talking about training again. So uh, let's get into it. This is Tiny Classroom Training. This program that we've launched this year is all about supervisory soft skills training. But what makes that work, Don?
Well, it works for a variety of reasons. Well, let's maybe start with a little definition of training. And what the purpose of training is to change behavior. If we think about that a little bit, it really applies to just about every layer and every level of training, from pre-employment onboarding of new folks to soft skill development in managers and supervisors, and so on and so forth. So let's use that notion as the hub of what we're going to talk about today.
And let's also accept the notion that companies ought to train their employees. As you know, I've often talked about hiring for attitude and training for skills, but training is a commitment. It's not expensive, but it's not cheap either. But companies have to do that. Employees expect to be trained so that they know what to do and why.
Absolutely. And it's, where you're getting to here, I think, is that it's a critical and a crucial aspect of the development of our employees, and ultimately of the organization's success. And there's really a straight line between success and competence and skill development, isn't there?
Yeah. And so let's talk about the kinds of training that companies should provide to their employees. The first is new hire training. When you hire somebody, you've got to show them what to do and why and how. But then there's supervisory training, there's leadership training, and there's the other kinds of training that help people to be more effective, whether it's learning how to do business writing or learning how to do critical thinking. All of these things come into what companies have to provide their employees.
That's absolutely right. And it really is a very broad spectrum of the presenting issues of training. And there's really three key pillars that we need to address: the idea of the needs, how do we support it, and the practice of things. Needs is really a first step in being effective at your training. And it's really that it must be tailored to address what we might call the specific requirements of employees in the organization. So if we started with new hire training, onboarding training, it would be very important to say, what's my goal here? What's my purpose in this new hire training? And you've done an awful lot of it over the years, Artie. What would you say that just in that one element is critical?
Yeah, what you just said is interesting. Understanding what are your objectives. I don't think most companies think about that when they engage in training. They just say, well, look, we have to teach someone to do something. But what kind of objectives should companies set, Don?
Well, it answered a simple question: how would you know at the end of this period, or a period of time, that your training has been effective? And that's a question that we use a lot across the board in a lot of the work we do in organizations. But how would you know is relatively infrequently asked. And if I can't answer it, I really can't design and execute the training in order to achieve that objective. It's very important.
So you're talking about measurement,
Yeah.
an ability to measure the effectiveness of training. Again, most of us just go out and train somebody, but what kind of measures do you think are important?
Well, I mean, it can be very rudimentary. How would I know after a month, after 3 months, 6 months later, that an individual has learned and is able to execute the skills that the training was designed to or intended to develop in a person? I can't do that. I can't then be a supervisor and understand how I'm going to evaluate and coach and develop this person further. I'm flying blind. And so what we want to really get at here, I think, is, yeah, there's methodology and there's things we want to talk about. But at the end of the day, this is like any other objective. Why am I doing this? What's my purpose? And how would I know? And then after that, how do I help and supervise and coach that individual? I know it's getting out of out of the bubble of this question a little bit, but that's all critical to the process of success, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And more often than not, managers send their employees to some kind of training, and they haven't really experienced actually what's going on in that training, so they can't support it. And so I've always felt that the managers have to go through the training. They have to understand the training. They have to be aligned with the employees who are in that training. I have to tell you, more often than not, employees in the classes that I used to teach would say to me, well, how come my boss doesn't have to take this course? And it's very important that they do, so that they have that alignment and they're on the same page.
It's easy to take this out of the development of an employee and turn it out and take it out into the bigger world. If you're going to be a physician and want to learn how to do surgery, you and I shouldn't be teaching them, should we? It should be somebody who's already knows how to do it. A pilot, the same thing. The bloody bus driver is taught by somebody who knows how to drive the bus down the street. And we need to be able to transfer that expectation over into our corporate life and view training as something other than an inconvenience and an unnecessary expense, but it has a purpose. And we trip over that an awful lot when we ask people these questions in an organization, and they don't really have a good answer. We just got to train,
And I think that the key to training is giving people the opportunity to practice before they have to actually do the training in front of a customer or on a line, and get comfortable with it and confident with what they're doing, and then start to do it.
That's right. We see this a lot, is that, in a way, training simply gets you to a place where you know something, but it evaporates almost immediately if we don't build it into a practice formula or format within a company, right? And so what you said, practice is very important, and we have to set up mechanisms so that the learner can apply their new knowledge and their skills in realistic scenarios, get constructive feedback, and to improve their performance and build confidence. And that's the piece that's often so very much lacking in a training cycle within an awful lot of organizations. They don't build it into practice. And as a result, it's kind of a waste of time until you get there.
Interestingly, you and I have talked to a lot of managers about training. And they say, look, I'm not a trainer, I'm a manager. But managers have to be coaches. Whether they're doing the training directly or not, they have to be able to coach it in real time, to talk to their employees and say, well, how's that going? What questions do you have? What are your goals? And if they're not actively engaged with their employees about what they've learned, I think that it dissipates very quickly, because the employee says, well, nobody cares. So I think that this concept of coaching is so critical to management.
It absolutely is. And in fact, it's the skill and the competence of managers that actually creates an environment for the person who's been trained to actually learn and succeed and gain confidence. It's the coach's role, not necessarily the instructor's role. The teacher, the instructor, it has a role of giving to the managers a person who's able to be competent and ready to go. The managers need to pick up that baton and coach. And learn how to do that effectively if the training is actually going to pay off. So what you said is very, very true.
We're here because of Tiny Classroom Training. And Tiny Classroom Training it's about soft skills to begin with. Mm-hmm. The things that, managers think that if I teach you how to do something, that you'll be okay. But those ability to to communicate, to listen effectively, to interact effectively, to resolve issues that come up. Those are the soft skills that managers need, I think, to help make training more effective as well.
I think you're absolutely right. So if we begin to sort of summarize here, training again, I think we're saying, works best when it's focused on a specific need of the person, the individual, the employee, and the organization, and delivered in a very engaging and supportive environment, and it gives the individual an ample time to sort of practice, get feedback, and continuously improve their performance. And again, that's the direct result, ultimately, not necessarily of the quality of the training, but of the quality of the management, the coaching that comes afterward.
You started off, Don, by saying, what are the objectives of training?
Mhm.
And it's one thing to have those objectives, and I want someone to be competent and confident and able to do what we've trained them. But without that reinforcement, time and again, we often talk about catching people doing things right. I think that training, the person in the training certainly has a, a responsibility to learn. The person who's doing the training certainly has a responsibility to convey that message effectively. But I'm sorry to sound like a broken record here, but the managers and their reinforcement, their support, and their oversight of the practicing is, if that's not there, I've seen training just go right off the rails.
And what you're really describing is that like a train, that one car connecting to the other, I can train, and my job is to give to managers, the people that these new employees or existing employees will report to, give them a qualification, but they have to take advantage of it. They have to hook up to it and move the learning and the competence development and so on forward. And I think that you sort of referred to that a little bit in the first of our conversation here today, that a lot of managers don't get engaged. They haven't taken the training themselves. They really don't know what they're coaching toward and have no experience in it. And subsequently, there's a disconnect there, isn't there? So maybe what we're really ending this conversation with is the idea that training has a purpose. Managers have a purpose. The manager's job is to take that training, take that new individual whose behavior has potential for them, and turn it into something that is successful, a competent individual who can deliver over and over and over on the purpose of that training, on the purpose of their job. So, what do you think, Artie?
I, I think we'd be remiss if something initially. I don't think that necessarily means that they're always going to be competent. And so managers have to be alert to how people are doing their jobs. And if they need retraining,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. And there's no shame in that. And managers should be out there talking to their employees. How are you doing? What do you need? What can I do to help you? And if you have any problems, come see me. Training's not just a one-time event, whether it's one subject or a bunch of subjects. You've got to keep maintaining their skills and their confidence.
That's exactly right. So I guess maybe in a way, training is designed to sort of direct individuals toward the competence and the skills that they need to develop in the context of the job that they have. So again, by focusing on the elements we talked about here today, organizations, you as managers and leaders, you can design programs that really act on what they're intended to do, is to equip people with the skills and the and knowledge that's necessary that gets them to being effective and good at their job. And there's the coach's opportunity to make sure that happens. So
I think training is about the most important thing that happens in a company. And if the company doesn't make the commitment to it, if the managers don't make the commitment to it, it's not going to happen as well as it could or should. And so I'd like to encourage every manager to make sure that you're engaged in training and making sure that your employees know what they have to do and why and how.
spot on, and I think it's probably a good cap to our conversation today. We'll look forward to continuing this conversation in 2 weeks from now on April 10th, where we're going to talk about the job skills training, and then there's soft skills training. And those two things are very distinct. And often the soft skills training is sort of ignored and not paid much attention to, and yet it's the critical training. So thank you for being here today, Artie, and everyone who's viewing this training class that we're talking about.
So we got to encourage you to go check out Tiny Classroom Training at www.tinyclassroomtraining.com. See what we're talking about, and make sure that you get engaged in training your staff today.
So thank you, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks.